Alright, so in this video I want to tackle the sometimes complex topic of encryption. Now, I have to apologize here. I didn't bring my tripod with me here, so hopefully I can keep the camera relatively stable here. But yeah, so right onto it. Encryption is a topic that can get pretty convoluted, but I'm going to try to distill it into the basics so that anyone can understand it, whether you have a security background or encryption background or not. Now, there's all kinds of different encryption algorithms, but the two that I'm going to be talking about today are symmetric and asymmetric encryption. So these are like some really prominent algorithms here. Very useful, very good to know about. So first we'll start with the symmetric encryption. Now, symmetric encryption is where you have the same key for encryption as you do for decryption. So you're just using the same key for both. Now, the advantage of this algorithm is it's very fast. It's very quick, really good for data transfer, and used a lot. Now, the other one is asymmetric encryption. And now what asymmetric encryption is you're using a different key for encryption than you are for the decryption. So this is a super secure way to transfer things, but the downside is it's a little bit slower. So oftentimes where you see this algorithm deployed is when you're establishing a connection to something where you only need to do it once, because if you're trying to do asymmetric decryption on a lot of data, it's just going to slow things down. It's going to be very slow. So a lot of times you see things use a hybrid implementation where you need a secure connection, so you establish that with asymmetric encryption, and then for the actual data transfer they do it with symmetric encryption. Now that we know the basic overview of what these things are, let's break it down into what are the common algorithms that you see for these implementations. So for the symmetric encryption algorithm, the most prominent one you'll see is AES. Now, with both asymmetric and symmetric, there's just so many different algorithms, and a lot of them, while at one time considered secure, are no longer secure because they were found to have security flaws. Maybe they weren't random enough, maybe there weren't enough possibilities, or too easy to brute force. But just know that you really only want to use like the most up-to-date algorithm, the one that is considered secure as of today. And I can tell you that there might be some other options, but for the most part, if you're looking for symmetric encryption, AES will be the way to go. Now on to asymmetric encryption. One of the standards that's been in place for quite a while now and still is, as far as I'm aware, is RSA. So now there's also a bunch of different ones like Diffie-Hellman and stuff, but if you want to use the most industry standard, would be RSA. So now the last thing that I'll sort of close off here with is sort of explaining how these encryption algorithms work, right? So I think for symmetric, that one's pretty easy to follow for most people. You just have one key for the same key for encryption as the decryption, but the security flaw for this is that unless you establish a secure channel using the asymmetric encryption, there's no safe way to pass those keys, because you don't want an attacker or any third party to get a hold of your key, because then they can decrypt and they can read your data in the plain text. So, but as far as actually using symmetric encryption, it's very straightforward. I have a message, I encrypt it with my key, and you get that key and decrypt it with that key, right? Pretty straightforward, pretty fast, but it has some security issues if it's just used on its own. Now, where it gets more tricky is the asymmetric encryption process. So the way that looks basically is you have what are called public keys and private keys. So anyone that you want to communicate with, like you'll have a public key, right? And that public key is what you'll use to encrypt your message. So I have a message, I encrypt it using my public key. but there's a bunch of mathematics behind this. But mathematically it works out so that the only way my message can be decrypted is using my private key, which only I have, and I never share this out with anyone else. Okay, so only you have your private key. So anyone that wants to send messages to you will they will go and see what your public key is. That's publicly available. That's why they call it the public key. So all right, I want to communicate with someone, I get their public key. So now I will just have my message, and I will use, you know, their public key to encrypt the data, right? So now once they get it, you know, only their private key can decrypt it. So they'll be able to see what my message is, and no one else has their private key, so therefore no one else can read that in the plain text except for them. So that's how it works. Anyone you want to communicate with, you see what's their public key, and then you encrypt it with their public key, and only their private key can decrypt it. So that's how that works, basically. And yeah, so I hope this video was of help to you guys. This can be, you know, if you read textbooks or like even Google stuff online, it can like look really intimidating and really complex, but that's really all it is. And yeah, I hope this helps, especially for the coming videos. I'm going to sort of build off of this knowledge base to explain other concepts. So yeah, thanks for watching if you stuck along thus far, and I'll see you in the next one.